So let's add some text to your design in Canva. What's great is Canva comes with a lot of pre-built options that are absolutely beautiful, really well-paired fonts that you can leverage and use. However, if you want to use your own font, if you have maybe a font from a logo or a website that you want to use, I'm going to go through some resources you can use to pair fonts and some general guidelines for using fonts within Canva to get the best possible look. So let's get started though and just look at some of the basic options. So as I mentioned, if you go to the text tab here on the left side and you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of beautiful, well-paired fonts that you can use for your design right away. So in this case here, 'tis the season to be jolly. Nice small simple font. Go ahead and delete that one here. Let's grab a different one. I'll tell you what, see a farm to table, and that seems to fit with what we're with the size of the photo there. So a well-paired font, kind of nice, interesting sizing and composition, ready to go. You could simply use that one and then update the text. Now, when you use one of these templates, they're going to be grouped. So all three of these fonts, you click once, you'll see the entirety, they all move around. Now you could go in, if you want to edit anything in particular, let's say we want to change this year. Let's say we just launched the company. Let's say we did it in 2000 instead. So established in the year 2000. And it wasn't California, it was New York. So what you want to do is just double click into it and you'll be able to make edits. Now the same is true for the colors. Clicking once kind of brings you in and you can see you're selecting the various three different ones. If we want to change this to a blue to go with our blueberries, we've selected this one in particular. We'll go to the action bar. Much like anything else, any edits you can make to these fonts will be in the action bar. We'll go to that and we'll change that to a blue. Right, so it comes out as a group, you're able to edit them. Now if you right click, or also if you look on the top right here, you'll see ungroup. Ungroup. So if you do want to get rid of that and kind of move stuff around, maybe move them a bit closer, you can ungroup them and you'll have complete control. What is good? I'm going to Control Z, undo until I get back to when they were grouped. Let's actually redo my slate text edit. Great. And actually redo my blue. Wonderful. Now in this case, when they're all grouped in together, if you grab one of these corners, it'll scale them all. So if you want to make it bigger, this will be true at any time when you're using fonts. If you grab the corner of the text box, it will scale for you. If there's a bunch of fonts grouped like this, it'll scale all of them together. The right side, much like the elements and the shapes like we discussed, this will mean it'll go further left and right. So if you had more and more text, let's see if we can bring this up under the same line. In this case here, let's say if this was smaller, like an 80, if I extend it, the text box is now wide enough to have all the words. However, if I grab that and I drag it into the middle again, you'll see that the text box is now too small and I'll break it onto another line. So that's what that's meaning. And that'll work if it's individual, so if I ungroup it here, or in a group. So as you can see, same thing. I can also now grab the corner and scale it. Now when I'm scaling this, I'm holding Alt so that it scales in place. You can imagine the pin, there's like a pin in the center of it, and I'm kind of pulling it on the outside. So now in this case I have it still ungrouped. Let's look at the rest of the options that come up here on the top left side. So the first one is the actual font itself. Clicking into this, you'll notice all of the fonts that are available inside Canva. Important note is that if you don't have Canva Pro, anything with a crown is not available to you, so you would need to upgrade. However, everything else is, and you can search. Let's say if you happen to know the name of a font you want to use, something like Roboto, you can certainly just grab it there, one click, and it's applied to your design. Continuing on, the next line here is for the size. So a quick scroll, you can see all the various sizes. You can also just type. If we know, for instance, we want it much larger, let's say 120, I'll tap that, enter it in, and there we are. Let's rearrange these just while we're working with it. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Now we'll select this next one. Now you notice that when I select more than one font at the same time, some of the options get disabled because there's multiple fonts that we're working with. So again, let's just kind of keep things simple, keep working on one. Next over is the text color. So bringing it up, you can either choose one you've already used, or of course use the selector tool to choose any color you like, or enter a hex code. I'm going to undo that. I'll tell you what, let's make that a darker blue. More fit our blueberries. Okay, let's keep on moving along. The next one you'll recognize as simply bold, italic, and underline. Nothing too fancy in that case here. Now the next one here is alignment. You don't click and then choose left or right. You just kind of cycle through. So one click will have it go left. One click will go justified. So justified where is no matter how big your text box is, it's going to ensure that the first letter of your sentence or that line and the last letter of that line touch the edges. Right, so that's a bit easier to see here with, let's make this justified, then make it much wider. Here. There. You can see there, it's going to stretch the spacing between words to make sure that the left and the right words always touch the outside. I'm hitting undo a bunch of times to bring me back to where I was, so Control Z or Command Z. But so click left, click justified, click right aligned, or click back to center. One after that is simply for bullets. So first click brings it into a, I'll tell you what, let's move some of these. Actually, it'll probably work better on the first one. Let me rewind a little bit. Let's say we're going to change the bottom one to a list of bullets, attributes of our wonderful farm. So first click brings it into a bullet format, New York, delicious, natural. Okay, now we'll see that it's currently left aligned, which doesn't work very well with a bulleted list, so we'll click once and bring it left aligned. Now first click brings on the normal bullets. Second click will bring in the numbered bullets. So if you wanted numbered bullets, you just have to press it a couple times. One more click removes it altogether. Now I'm going to press Control Z, bring us back to where we were. There we are. So last is spacing. Now this one includes 3 different options. So letter spacing, generally speaking, you're not going to need to deal with this one too much. It can make a font look kind of weird, kind of funky if you're not careful, but it's going to just adjust the amount of space between each letter. Where this can sometimes be fun is, let's say if it's just the word farm. And it's going to take up the whole room. And watch this, if you go spacing and then just adjust it. Especially if it's a bit of a bigger font, you can see how the word still is legible despite how wide it is. So it just takes up more space. So you click on the item, you hit spacing, and you adjust the letter spacing. Now you can adjust it with the slider. You can also click over here and just enter a number. So I put it back to 0. Line height, let's go. I'm going to hit undo a bunch of times. Line height is the spacing between the lines of your text box. So we'll have spacing here, and you'll see if I increase it, they're just going to remove. This is nice with proximity, where because this is farm to table is its own element. That's kind of a sentence or a statement within the design. So to keep that together, to really ensure that those two things are read together and seen as a unit, it's nice to keep it fairly close together. And since it's only 3 words, you can do you can read it easily. Generally speaking, as a rule, you want to have 1.5 times for line height if there is more sentences, if it's a body of text. But for titles, you can kind of go a little bit lower, keep it together, makes it a nice tight design, a nice tight grouping for our work. So for body text that you have to read, suggest trying to get a line height of 1.5 with some nuance depending on your design and your spacing. And if it's a title, generally speaking, try to keep them closer together so that the title looks like a tight grouping. Last option within here is the anchor. So I've clicked this one. I click spacing, anchor. All this means is that as you add more lines, where does it expand? Does it expand down, this first option? Does it expand from the middle and grow? Or does it expand up? Let's give a quick example of what that would look like. And let's say we have it at the bottom here. I know at some point I'm going to add more. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this. And as I add farm to table, are delicious blueberries. Not much too big, so I selected all the text. Going to come up here, we'll go 80. But you can see as I added text, it's streamed upwards. Let's try that again. If I do this and instead put spacing downwards, farm to table, let's just say berries. It goes downwards. And conversely, of course, if we choose the last one, it'll expand up and down at even rates. So it'll go both sides of that way. So those are all the default options. I'm going to keep going back for text. It's really useful if you do want to add in your own fonts. So you don't want to use any of these particular templates. Adding in your own text is easy, and what's really nice is that Canva will keep track of what's in the design canvas already, so you can kind of quickly reuse it as you're doing design. To speak about another general rule when you're using fonts, less is more. And specifically, if you can keep your fonts to 2, so 2 font faces, let's say something like Arial and Times New Roman, ones we're all kind of familiar with, 2 fonts only, generally speaking, font families. And then even within that, as few sizes, colors, and spacings, because every time you add a different size, it still adds more visual weight, more challenging issues that people would have to take in. So as few fonts as possible is going to really help to drive home the message and make it very legible. This way too, every time there's a title, it's very noticeable what is a title, because this is the font. That has a lot more to do in larger designs like websites and reports or presentations to reduce the fonts. In a small space like this, you're not going to be able to put too much, but as generally a rule, try to use as few fonts as possible to keep the design clean. But we're going to be kind of going against that and using 3 different sizes here. But we'll go ahead and hit a heading. Clicking it in just as a piece of text. Again, I can choose anything from here. I'm going to go ahead and grab something. Let's just say this one. A real fat face. I'm going to grab the corner and scale it up. I made that a little bit larger. Now what's useful, you'll notice that over here on the left side for text, document styles. Whatever fonts you've added into the design, Canva will keep track of, so that if you want to add another one, you can just click on it once and it adds it in for you. And you can go ahead and add the text whatever you want. Blueberries, for instance. So that becomes super useful. Now if we add in a subheading, comes in very small. Let's go ahead. We'll keep it with Open Sans for now. Let's put that at like a 60. A little smaller. 4 headings. Again, as a general rule, if you can, you're going to need a lot of nuance because it's not going to work with the spacing or the amount of words. If you can try to double the sizes between your headings, you'll be in good shape, so that when there's difference between big bold text and the next level of text, it's dramatic enough. There's enough contrast to matter. Because let's say this is our first heading. Let's use even the same font to really drive home the point. I'm going to copy and paste it. So this is one heading. We go to the second heading and we just make that like 70. There's not enough difference. Like you can tell that it's obviously different, especially because it's the same amount of text, or the exact same text, but now in this case, because it's not different enough, there's not enough contrast between those 2 fonts, it's really difficult to see. It almost feels like a mistake, because visually you can almost start to tell that these 2 fonts aren't exactly the same. It's a different size. Is there a reason? Did the designer do that by accident? So it really helps if this is 80. If you could target 40, so try to double it each time. But if that ends up being, again, this is a bit of nuance, maybe we bring it up, we cheat it up to like 50. But immediately what you can see is clearly these 2 are different. It feels like it's on purpose. There's enough drama or contrast between them, and it's meaningful. So if you can, when you're going between titles and body text, if you can double it, that's a general good rule of thumb. Try to double it. You're not often going to get there, but if you use that as your baseline and then massage it a little bit, you'll be okay. Let's see. Natural. Alright, so let's add some base text. So that was those 2. Now we got our body text. Now this is silly small for some reason. We'll change it to Open Sans. Let's just go with, instead the Open Sans normal. Light would be the exact opposite of bold, where it's bold, regular, then light. So light is super thin. if you ever see that on a font. In this case here, this was 50. Let's see if we put that at about a 30. And that feels better. That feels legible. I'm going to keep these two together because they're kind of like a title, and this is just a little extra text. So 1, 2, 3, text goes within that. Now, like I said, the really interesting part about this is these 3 fonts have all been added here under document styles. So 80, 55 with the Brill, and below that is Open Sans 30. So if you need to add like a second, let's say a website text, I can click on it, it gets added in, then now you can do the website. Right? So easy, simple enough. But how do you know what fonts to use? How can you pick a font that's going to work really well? Even more difficult if you have a font already. Let's say you found one for your logo, it's beautiful, you love it, and you want to know what fonts will go with the font you're already using. I want to show you a couple websites completely free that are very useful for this exact purpose. And let's use Open Sans as the example. Open Sans is a super useful, super clean font. So let's go with Open Sans. Do we have that for, I'm going to make all these Open Sans actually. Let's say we're going to make our titles Open Sans, and we're trying to find a font, the secondary text and even third text maybe, that'll go with our Open Sans. Make that bold so it stands out. Okay, so Open Sans. How would I find a font that pairs well with Open Sans? Well, Canva itself actually has a great little tool online where you can choose a beginning font, and it'll show you some examples of fonts that work well. So much the same way as when we first searched it, let's search for Open Sans. Does a quick little bit of searching, and immediately it's going to find us a couple options we can consider. So first here we have Futura, PT condensed, and it's suggesting it here for the header text with Open Sans as the body. And it gives you a nice little example of it somewhere else online. In this case here we have Minion Pro for the title, and then Open Sans for the body text. And so on and so on. So you can see that you'd be able to find ones that'll work really nicely. So that is one quick way, Open Sans and Source Sans Pro for the body. There we go. Now another option here is Font Pair. Now Font Pair you can start, this is a bit more useful if you're just trying to find beautiful fonts that work together. All of these fonts, fortunately on font combinations from Canva, Font Pair and the next one I'll talk about, MixFont, they're based on Google Fonts. Google Fonts is a completely free resource for you to use. You can download these to your computer, install it, so you can also, anything else you're working on, let's say PowerPoint locally, can use these fonts too, which is really useful. I highly recommend when you're choosing fonts for your website, your logo, for anything else, if you can stick within these free fonts, it helps because then you can use them anywhere. What's nice is with websites, modern website builders, they'll use these same fonts as well, and they'll mostly be available inside of Canva. And that is at fonts.google.com. If you want to search and find, for instance, Open Sans that we were just working with, or Sans, you'll find it right there. So, Font Pair though, what's good, actually quick discussion here about serif versus sans serif, just in case you know. Let me move our blueberry word here for a second. Where's our Brill? Great. So if you notice I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see it here. This just helps, and especially when choosing the font. The three important ones really to know are serif, sans serif, and handwritten or display. Let me bring one of those up here too so we can talk about it. Okay, so sans serif simply means that the font does not have any feet. So if you look at this one here, you can see there's little feet at all of their edges. So sans, like literally meaning without. Sans serif, no feet, without feet. Serif, with feet, with little feet on the letters. And display or handwriting is more creative fonts. So it'll be kind of funky, wild fonts. Let's see, like you can see here with this New Year font, that would be a display font. And then clearly something like this, and this Let's Celebrate, that's a handwritten font. But you'll find that often people use those interchangeably, so it's good to know, but generally you'll be fine knowing display or handwritten. So sans serif. Serif and display. Why I mention that is because for the next site it helps to determine, it helps to know that in searching for a font pair. Specifically, if I want a serif title, so I want my titles to be have the feet, so it looks a little bit more regal, more refined, kind of classic. You could say I want a serif and then a mixed with a sans serif. So I click on that and we can see some examples of that. So biorhyme and cabin. So this would be cabin, this would be biorhyme. It's nice here with this one too, you can actually download immediately right here. It'll grab the Google font for you. Cormod and Prosa, Allegra and Open Sans, the Open Sans we just had. So many options you can consider. This is at fontpair.co. You can see featured pairs for ones that they just suggest, ones that a lot of designers are loving and using, they've submitted. Sans serif and sans serif. Lots of options you consider. These are well paired fonts that work very well together, and they're always based on Google Fonts, completely free. Now MixFont, if you want to see the fonts live in action, this site is a lot of fun. You could waste a lot of hours on it. So we go to MixFont, let's say mixfont.com, start the generator. And from here, you're just going to generate, and see what it looks like in context. So down here at the bottom, we'll hit, oh actually my face is probably in the way here. Let me get rid of that. So down here in the bottom, if you press the refresh button, you'll see different fonts as they come up. Now if you see one you like, what's great is you can come up to the top here on the left, click on it, and lock it in. And now it's only going to suggest ones for you that look good with it. So we have headline 1, Creon, and what's really cool is again, it's kind of showing it what's it look like in a header. Scroll down though, and it's also going to show you what's it look like reversed, what's it look like in a story, in an article, what's it look like in a card, what's it look like in applications. So that's a lot of fun. So you can, and if it's not quite doing it for you, you could roll up to the back, top, find a new combination that work really well. You can then take these fonts, come back to Canva. You'll be a little limited because not every one of these is going to be installed or free necessarily. Oops, wrong one there. We'll click onto the font, we'll click into here. So we clicked on the font, we clicked into the action bar, the font name, and now we'll search for the one we just found. How is that spelled? Ah, there we are, Rajdhani. Rajdhani bold, if I'm, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and then, what's this one? Text me one, not sure I like that. Or that either. Gonna find a nice one. Alerta. Let's see if that one works. Is that 2 L's? Doesn't seem like it has it, so not a problem. Bit of a shame, but that's the way it goes. If you do have the pro version of Canva, you can actually upload fonts too. So you'll be able to download something from Google Fonts and upload to it. Just something to remember if you ever do go with the upgrade in future. There we are, Mandali. Let's switch this one over to Mandali as well. Great. So a couple tools for it. So the text font, the text tab within Canva gives you lots of great options for adding text to your design. You can use the predefined font combinations that are put together by designers, and they look amazing and beautiful, super fast, super quick to add it in, and some really great options. If you do go on your own way, you add in the various sizes here, and anything you edit will then result in it showing up in your document styles, so you can reuse it. Remember, a couple general guidelines for fonts. Between titles, try to double the font size as much as possible. And again, be reasonable and have a bit of nuance there, but generally if you can double the difference between titles and body text, you're going to be in really great shape. Try to use as few fonts as possible, and definitely no more than 2 font families if you can avoid it. Just, having too many fonts makes things busy, it's hard to pair and really design well. So less is more in that case. Try to only have 2. With body text, try to have only a line height of 1.5. So, and again, a bit of nuance there depending on how it looks in your spacing, but have a line height of 1.5 to make sure it's really easy to read. And otherwise have some fun. So look at sites like canva.com/font combinations, fontpair.co in MixFont to find really great combinations that you can use for your next design. And can't wait to see some text into your designs.